Recording. It is 4:38 and we will convene the meeting of the Arpa Needs Assessment Committee on Wednesday, May 18th. The first item on the agenda is to amend if necessary and then accept the agenda. Does anyone have any amendments to make to the agenda? Okay, so hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thanks, Ruth. And a second?
Second.
Thanks, Glenn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Raise your hand. Any opposed? Raise your hand or say nay. And seeing none, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from our meeting last week, May 11th. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes, and are there any amendments to be made?
I didn't see any. I move to approve the minutes.
Thanks, Ruth. And a second?
Second.
Thanks, Glenn. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And seeing none, the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is public comment, and let the record reflect that there are no members of the public here with us today. The next item on the agenda is correspondence, and pardon my memory, but I feel like we got one more piece of correspondence over the course of last week. Is that
Geraldine, or am I a week behind?
I think, I don't know, does anyone?
You did get a piece of correspondence from the fire department about the stair chair?
About when we were gonna be able to make our decision?
No, about the stair chair.
I didn't get a piece of correspondence about the stair chair.
That's odd. I'll forward it to you. Basically, Bonnie was watching our meeting and she saw that we were discussing they had purchased a stair chair, and she wanted to correct the record that they have not purchased a stair chair. What you saw on Facebook was them practicing with their current stair chair.
Oh, okay.
So
That's
I'll
helpful
forward
to
that.
know. I feel like the correspondence I got was maybe through Jean about the schedule.
Maybe. I didn't see that.
Okay, all right, I'll look back.
Did you?
No,
I remember there was something, I guess it was sent to Barbara, but it was from Jean, something about some nonprofit of some sort sent a communication about the ARPA.
Yes, the Charlotte Hungerford Hospital is looking to create a program, and they're wanting to request ARPA funding. So since we've already made our direct allocations, that's going to have to go into the bucket of application allocation.
I saw it on my email, that's what,
okay. Okay. Anyone else thinking of anything that is related to correspondence? So let's jump into old business, item A being the report. Thank you, Barbara, for forwarding your section of the report. I think we can discuss that today, as well as the example applications that you put together. I have added my section to the report, but did not have a chance to email it to everyone. So there is no way that you, unless you were diligently, checking the Google Drive, you wouldn't have seen it. So we will put that on for next week. Patricia, have you made your updates to your section?
No, I'm waiting for the first drafts of the other sections and make comments on those, and then I'll get my changes done. They're minimal, and that isn't what's holding us up.
Okay, well, we can peek into my section today if you'd like. I don't think there'll be that many comments on it, so it just really depends on how long you want to meet. What I would like to do, however, is get the report prepared in a compiled way so that we can all look at it together as an integrated document. So it would be great to avoid 2 more meetings, but let's see how far we get. I guess as a first item then, did everyone have a chance to read Barbara's section about the ARPA funding itself?
I did.
And does anyone have any comments, corrections, suggested edits, anything like that to make?
Well, overall, I think that if the section is the beginning of the presentation to the Board of Selectmen, the first section of the report, I think it could use an introduction of some sort and a contents table. And it feels like it's very dense, and maybe it could be broken out into more bullet points. And
I'm sharing my screen here because I just wanted to reorient ourselves to the outline that has been in our Google Drive now for over a month, with the suggestion that there be an intro that talks about committee membership and what COVID in Kent is all about. And when I was looking at this earlier today, Patricia, it seemed to me that some of the, the language in the beginning of your recommendations belonged here, and that the report very much could have an introduction that would kind of get us into that. And so this is what I'm saying in terms of having a complete draft. It would be nice to see everything together, because then I think that we might feel that it was appropriate to shift a paragraph here and there in order to make the report read better.
which paragraph are we talking about?
See, I don't have it because I didn't bother cutting and pasting your Word document that we made substantial changes to into this, because I thought that you were going to email it to me.
Well, it's in the folder in its original form, not in the edited form.
So without discussing the actual language, because I don't think that that's really helpful since we don't have it before us, let's just take note of the point that it would be good to have an introduction, and that perhaps some of the language in the report that you put together would be appropriate there. And we can look at it next week. Barbara's section itself, which is now inserted into this document, this draft report. Does anyone have any thoughts as to any changes that need to be made?
Well, I had a question on,
Not on the applications yet.
what are we discussing?
What she sent over that has to do with the overview, compliance, and reporting. She sent about a page and a half,
Oh, okay.
something like that. Earlier.
I have one typo that just needs to be corrected that I can see. And it's, I don't know, when you print it out, when you inserted it into the report outline, it's on the very top of page 3. There's an ellipsis in between the word "the" and "government." And that's because I lifted this from I lifted a lot of it from other documents, and that ellipsis could be removed. Right there.
Okay.
And just to speak to Patricia's point, I agree, it's dense and it's a lot of information and it's kind of boring. So maybe it doesn't belong in the beginning of the document. Maybe it belongs sort of towards the end. So if people want to read this information, they can, and if they don't, they can just not. I don't know.
I mean, it is very relevant, for sure. But I'm torn about it. It's relevant and it's important, but it's not the best lead into the report in terms of grabbing interest. So, I'm not sure what to do about it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And again, I think we could just move it toward the end of the report.
So here's why I don't think that we should do that.
Okay,
My opinion, Barbara, and that is that I think that it is very helpful to say upfront exactly what these funds can be used for before we make our recommendations. I think that your section is very good at clarifying what the funds are for and what they're not for.
Could I just say something? I was going to ask to have this put on the agenda for today's meeting, but since, there's two people that aren't here, I didn't say anything about it. But anyway, I put together an outline for the report, and it could be used as a model and so forth. But in any case, it's streamlined all the information that we have, a lot of the information that Patricia put together. I took it and I put it into a 3-page document. And anyhow, it's streamlined everything. It breaks everything down. And I'd be interested with to hear what the other members of the committee have to say about it.
Did you share
I have not shared it
Oh,
because it
okay.
was not brought up yet.
it? Okay, I thought maybe I was missing something.
I
No.
respect that very much, Joe, but I also think that we need to go with what we have because we need to wrap this up.
I
And
know.
we cannot spend time
Absolutely.
talking about design of report. We have several sections drafted. It's not very long. And I think that we ought to stay with what we've got.
Well, I mean, can it just be sent out and get feedback on it? I don't understand why that can't be done.
There's no reason why it can't be sent out, but my personal recommendation to the committee and please speak up, is just that we can't really go back and start thinking about different designs for the report. We have most of it written.
This would serve as a model. I'm not saying that this is what needs to be done. I'm saying that this would serve to be a model. It's streamlined. It contains all the relevant information. It expands the application process because there was a lot of information that was not known before, and that's also included in there because there's 35% of the ARPA funds that are going to be taken up by the application process. So I think that should be included in the report.
What was our time frame? What we were thinking of? Were we thinking of wrapping this up today, or?
I think maybe some of us were hopeful of wrapping it up for today.
Yeah,
We're
but
not going to
we
wrap
can't.
it today.
We
but-
have to see the whole thing and before we can.
Yeah,
do
we
anything.
can't wrap it up today, but,
Yeah.
the way
Why
that.
don't you send us what you've got?
Okay.
If we're gonna meet again.
Yeah.
I'll share
Send
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think, the next step is to decide format, content, and design, and how we
I
go.
feel like we've decided format though.
Okay.
I mean, but with
No,
the
but I mean,
exception
we're
that we
talking-
need to see things together.
Right, but we're
Yeah.
talking, do we put
I
Barbara
would-
somewhere else,
You're
that
right.
kind of stuff.
You're right. Once we see what we have,
Right. We
once
need
we
to
see the salad, we
complete-
need to compose it.
Right.
Yeah.
Personally, do we need to have that much information that Barbara put together? I mean, that would be probably 2 pages right there just for that. Can that be condensed down into something?
Joe, what is your, why are you so keen on condensing this down as much as possible? For what purpose?
For expediency? Because you don't really need to have so much information in the report to the selectmen. I mean,
well, I disagree
Well,
with you, Joe. I think that this report, in addition to going to the selectmen, is also going to the public at large. And I think without all of the different pieces of information that we're discussing, including, they aren't going to get a full picture of the program.
Well,
That's
actually,
my,
For more, Joe, once that goes into the folder for the first selectmen meeting, everyone has access to it. Everyone that works in town hall, everyone that lives in town, everyone that has an interest can go in, see the report, print it out, and they don't have a world of knowledge about ARPA as you're assuming the selectmen do. So I agree with Barbara, and I'm not in favor of revisiting the section that we went through with the fine tooth comb last week, because I just want to move forward and get this done. I don't want to keep revisiting.
I think we all agree on, are you talking about the categories of all that stuff?
No,
I'm talking about the section that I wrote last week and we reviewed last week, made changes, finalized it. I want to consider that done, a fait accompli, and let's move on with the other two sections.
I don't think there was any disagreement with that part.
Well, but you just said you took it and reduced it all down to 3 pages.
I did, but there's nothing that was taken out from your information. It just was.
So did you make the type really small?
We have to move forward. We have to be okay with what different members of this committee are putting together, especially if we think it makes sense. Let's get it together. Let's see how concise it is. If we think it's too long, no one's going to read it. Maybe we can make cliff notes. I don't know, but I think that let's stop arguing about this because it seems pretty pointless to me. And at this point, when we know what we're going to say and we're just saying it. I mean, that's what we're doing right now, is we're compiling our report. So
Okay,
we
so
have Barbara's
we
section.
have Barbara's, we have Patricia's, and we'll have yours.
And we also have these, so Barbara's section, can we be okay with that? Can we agree that it looks good as drafted at this point? Barring, I mean, do we need to take a vote on the importance of having that information in the report?
No, we just vote on the whole
I don't
thing.
think so. It is important. Obviously, it's really important.
I think we just vote on the whole package. See where we have to vote for each one.
Okay, so can we move on then to the application process and the application forms, which we are going to suggest?
Barbara, I'm just one question on the topic. What is pay-go funded building of infrastructure?
that's the same that we do now with our capital plan. We pay as we go. So we tax the taxpayers 1/5 for 5 years. And then when we accumulate the money, then we complete the project.
People will know what that means.
Oh, maybe not. Maybe I should take that out. Again, I lifted some of this language right out of
Yeah.
the official documents because I wanted to try and keep it as true to the original as I could.
What if we just wrote pay as you go? Because when I looked at it, I understood that to mean pay as you go.
Nah, I don't.
Too complex? Too,
Pay as you go always, to me, is garbage, it's not about. It's like the capital plan, as she said, it's a 5 years. Well,
Okay, that's the only question I had on the overview, compliance and reporting.
all right, let me,
okay,
Maybe
so
we could just put a parens and put AKA 5-year capital plan next to it, and that would explain it to
yeah.
people.
that explains it to people. That's, yeah.
I had a couple of comments on the application itself.
Okay, so before we get into the forms, there are two pieces that go with it, or actually, why don't we do them in this order? The grant application information and submission, which is a two-sider that provides basic information about the grant application to begin with. And then we can look at the three classes of applications, and then we can look at the grant agreement at the end. Does that make sense? Okay, so.
Yeah.
Grant application information and submission. Any comments, thoughts, feedback?
Well, that kind of dovetails with what my comment was for the three individual applications, is that to have the information on, where is it here?
Can I look at mine? Here,
Yes,
Okay.
okay. Yeah, to have to tell the people where to send the application. I know it's on this plan, on this page here, but to have that information put onto each of the individual applications somewhere. This way here, when people are filling out the forms, they will have right in front of them where it's sent, who it's sent to, and how it can be sent.
so I think that's a good point. Can we talk about it when we talk about the actual forms and see if we think this piece is a good piece? I think it's a good
I think
piece.
it's fine.
Anyone with thoughts on other thoughts on the application information and submission document?
I just wanted to share that I added the word small business. We had local business before, and I added the word small because when I was going through the final rule, it became very apparent that they were definitely utilizing that terminology, and they even defined it as less than 500 employees, et cetera. So I thought it was important to modify our stuff just a little bit to include that. So it was the same language as the final rule. And I guess my theory is not that Kent has any, but if there was a huge manufacturing plant with 1,000 employees, they wouldn't qualify to apply for Arpa funding through this program. And I think that's the intent of the final rule.
That makes sense to me. To draw a line for any of our local private schools. No,
Not mine.
does,
Well, the local private schools are nonprofits anyway.
does Highwatch have 500
I can't
employees?
imagine.
I don't think
Okay.
it's-
So I know, yeah, I think it was a good catch, and I think it's useful, and
Yeah, no, I think the more defined we are, the better. Yeah.
yeah,
But don't you think that the local private schools are nonprofits anyway, so they wouldn't be in the business category anyway?
Sure.
So
if they are, I don't know that they all are, but they
Yeah,
probably are.
I think they are.
Okay,
And I like
Yeah.
that.
I think Highwatch is a for-profit, isn't it?
Sure.
High Watch? No,
Oh, no, maybe not,
no.
I don't know.
right, because that's the whole paying taxes on houses thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, so we're good on this.
Yeah, I think this is complete, Barbara. I think, yeah.
Well done, Barbara.
All right,
I don't know what else.
we have our forms. In general, do we think it would be useful to have the information about where to send these forms?
Yeah, I think Joe makes a good point.
Yeah, I can add that to the back of page 2, right beneath where they sign it.
Sorry, I missed that. Okay, I'm sorry. What are you going to add to page 2?
We like Joe's suggestion about putting the address on.
Where to send it.
Oh, on
each
the
one.
applications, yes. On the first page, which is grant application information and submission, the first bullet should be individuals, plural, and families. Applications will be accepted from June 1st, probably not through August 15th, which is longer than we talked about, but we won't be ready June 1st anyway. So July 1st.
Fine with me.
That's fine. 6-week period,
July 1st to
August
September
15th.
15th.
That would be a 10-week period, which is fine too, but
Well, here it's June through August, so we're gonna lessen the time, or?
I think
If
6
we-
weeks is sufficient, but 10 weeks is fine too.
We talked about 5 or 6 weeks for
I
the,
would shorten it. I would say, yeah.
So
Okay.
July 1 to August
August
15.
15th, is that fair enough?
Okay.
I don't know. Barbara, you're the one who's gonna be,
Have to process them all by August 15.
Yeah, I think that should be okay. The only thing that I was concerned about was that's going to be where I'm trying to ramp up for audit, and I have a new auditor this year, but
well, you tell us what makes you comfortable, because this is yours.
it just, to me, because it's going to be a couple of weeks to get the information out. So that'll give us plenty of time for July 1. Sorry, my daughter's calling me. She doesn't realize I'm in a meeting. I think 8 weeks would be better.
so July 1st to August 30th.
Yeah. Because some people may be working harder than others to get documentation together. I don't know. I just want to give people plenty of time. Because I am going to require quite a bit of documentation, really.
Okay, Patricia, do you have any other comments to this document? Because I thought we had been. through
Yeah,
it.
under
Nobody
local
else does.
small business, again, it's in local small businesses. Company or business, provides commodities, goods, products. Those seem a little bit the same.
I think this is a definition that Barbara lifted directly out of the guidance.
It is.
So I think we should go with what the feds are using.
Nonprofit is an entity with a Kent, Connecticut address. That isn't true for some of the COG applicants, like the Housatonic Valley Association, or some of the organizations that I feel will have strong applications do not necessarily have a Kent, Connecticut address.
Can I change that word to presence? Will that work? A Kent,
That's-
Connecticut
That's
presence?
good.
Yeah. With a Kent presence,
Or a service area,
yeah. No, presence is good, yeah,
presence is fine.
all right. And
Could we go back to, I found this form just now, could we go back to this, the grant application? Because there was a couple of things on here that I was wondering about. That could, for example, can we do that?
Yes,
Anyway, can they also be put into the drop box in the parking lot out there?
Oh, well, my concern with that is that if somebody puts it out there and it's, August 29th, and I don't get it until September 1,
Oh,
and the cutoff date has been had. That's why I said they could hand deliver it to the selectman's office. They can email it or they can mail it. That way, if it's mailed, it's postmarked. If it's hand delivered, it's stamped received. If it's emailed, it's time stamped. I was a little reticent to allow them to use the Dropbox.
yeah, I didn't think about the time frame on that for the Dropbox.
And this piece is where? Is it in the section with overview, compliance and reporting, or is it in the appendices?
I think it's got to be an appendice made pursuant to your recommendations. So we need to integrate it into your recommendations section as the suggested form, which I think that language is already there, is appended here too. And then I'm looking at this just to clear up any confusion or maybe confuse you more. This grant application information and submission documents makes reference to appendices, and that's because Barbara designed it to be a cover page to these 3 forms and the grant agreement. So this is a document that gets stapled and picked up by people. Is that right?
Right. Yeah.
And where does it go?
In our report, it will be an appendix, and then it becomes something
Okay.
that they can pick up in town hall or print off of the
Okay.
town website.
I
Gotcha.
think it would be the first appendix, the first one.
Okay.
That way it sort of feels like it's part of the report, and then all the other things are sort of behind it. And I did send an email yesterday. I had 2 thoughts that I thought should be included in Patricia's part somewhere as a recommendation. One is the recommendation that this application and review process gets handled in the treasurer's office, because I didn't think it would be right for me to make that recommendation in this part. And also a firm recommendation that monthly reports to the selectmen and the general public would be available, so that there's lots of transparency.
It does say that
Does
already.
it? Okay,
Yeah.
I apologize then, I didn't realize that.
If we all agree, let's just make sure that it's in there in the final. I think those are good points. And I'm passing a printout of that email around so that everyone has seen it.
Okay. And the way I did this is each document is just 1 page, but it's 2-sided. So it's only 5 or 6 pages total for this.
So are we through, Joe, with your additional comments on this first part of Barbara's
Yes.
application process?
I was going to ask about where this is going to be distributed, but you kind of covered that just now, that this is going to be included with the application itself.
Yes.
I see. That was going to be another question, but I'm all set with that, with my questions.
I have a dumb question because I really don't know. 501c, that covers all kinds of, I
Yeah,
only know 501c3, so I.
501c3 is one certain type of nonprofit, but there might be
There
others.
might be others, okay, just on my ignorance, that's all I.
Again, I just lifted that right out of the final rule. So I thought, if they put it in there, good enough.
Okay,
This is another dumb question, but if we have this first, I'm just asking so I could type it into my section of the report before I send it, the revised version. If this is page 1 of the appendices, the application info and submission, can we presume that the application samples will be page 2, 3, and 4, and that the sample agreement is page page 5 of the appendices.
Well, they're
Yes, that-
double-sided, so it would never work that way. So Patricia, what your best bet is to do, as with any draft, is to put appended here to as appendix and then put a bracket. You can put the letter A in that. Usually you wouldn't paginate appendices, but if you'd like to, then just put a comma and put XX to XX. Because we won't really know the pagination, you know, and that's another question too, is the report will have its own pagination. So do you want to restart the pagination with the appendices or not, which is why people usually don't paginate appendices.
Yeah,
So you're just best off inserting a bracket. And I think having the application be Appendix A is a good suggestion, Barbara, because I do think for those who don't read farther than Appendix A, at least then they've seen the application.
Could I ask a question on this email that's going around the table here? I'm a little confused about, all right, it says down here about also include recommendation that monthly reports be supplied by the treasurer's office, read grant awards and justifications. That is something that was in the draft report.
This is what Patricia is saying, that it's already in there.
Okay, so now, if that's the process, and then Barbara gives a report every month as to how the applications have been processed, what happens after that point when they go to the selectmen?
What do you mean? What's exactly?
What happens with those forms after they are sent to the selectmen?
Well, they won't. Barbara will be processing the grants and providing a report to the selectmen. This is how many grants went out.
But
This
I
is the
mean,
status.
I guess what I'm asking is that, are they going to be approved at that point?
Barbara will approve them and send them out if they fit within these guidelines.
The selectmen aren't going to approve them.
The selectmen hopefully will approve the allocation of the different pots that we've identified and recommended to them.
But they're not going to be approving the individual
They're not going to approve
applications.
each individual $5,000 grant,
I'm
no.
not so sure about that.
But that's not our recommendation, is it?
I thought the selectmen have the final say on each of those.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Barbara, am I incorrect?
Well, it's an interesting question because the selectmen can delegate that to my office based on this recommendation. And that was sort of the idea, that the application and this whole process was going to be so sort of tight that there's not a lot of wiggle room. The people either qualify or they don't based on this information that we're requesting. If they qualify, then they get a grant. If they don't qualify, they don't.
It seems like an additional step.
No, it's just that the final, because I just went through this in Falls Village, that the final authority for grants rests with the selectmen. But if you're saying they're going to give you the.
Right. And that's what we did in Cornwall. Not that I don't like talking about Cornwall when I'm not there, but the selectmen gave the committee the authority to approve grants and distribute money.
Okay, I didn't know they could do that, but that's great.
Yep.
That's fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because they went crazy in Falls Village over, let them have to do it.
Yeah, the only reason why I mentioned that is because I recall seeing at one of the Sharon meetings about the selectmen. They didn't like the fact that they had to stop and do an application and then go on, do something else, and then another one comes dribbling in and so forth. They wanted to see all of them at one time, because this way here, it
Well,
was.
that was, but if you can delegate to Barbara, that's fine. That's even better. Because it will, if you have to go before the selectmen every single time, you're gonna be.
Well, it would be monthly, so in theory, this would be twice,
Mm,
right? But.
Right.
you know,
Theory.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
Okay, so the
Those-
forms,
That's, so that we're set with those so far.
the forms themselves, we've already discussed adding the address that the applications get sent to,
Mhm.
and decided that was a good idea. Do we want to start with any individual form? Do we want to
Mhm.
talk generally about the forms?
Well, let's just go through it quickly, Ken.
Okay, so let's start with individual then.
Yeah.
Well, basically what I did was I did the individual form first. And then when I moved on to the other two, I just changed just some of the information to make them applicable to whichever form I was utilizing, but
Right.
they're
Okay.
pretty much the same.
So if we read this one, we're pretty well set.
Yeah, you might want to just review the check boxes in the middle of the other two forms because those are really the only difference.
I have one thought on the checkbox, and that is just to add other. I know it throws off the symmetry, but I think that there might be some merit, because I'm just not sure that we thought of everything, that we could ever think of everything. And in the interest of not trying to think of everything, just putting another in a blank would be a good way of catching that.
Well, you could do it.
Okay, so if I'm gonna put in other, I would need to put a line for them to write in what the other was.
Yeah, so how about just other, like underneath it all, a single checkbox with a blank other, and then a line where they could write in.
Okay,
I had a question on the individual family ARPA funding application. For the questions about the household, could you give a little explanation about that checklist? I mean, what is the relevance of that?
that's gonna be relevant in my reporting back when I have to do federal reporting.
Well, would this have something to do like say, for example, with the say food stamps, SNAP or whatever it's called now, with where they ask you the number of people in your household, and therefore the benefit is higher with that information in mind?
I guess it could to some degree. I was thinking of it more along the lines of if a family fills out an application and they have one school-age child and that's all they have versus a family that has 5 school-age children. I don't know. It's just when I have to do the federal reporting, I have to report on how many families with children and how many households with seniors that we utilized ARPA money with. So that was really where that was coming from.
Oh. So those questions come from the Treasury guidelines.
Not directly, but indirectly, yes. Because at some point, I'm probably going to have to submit all of these documents to the Treasury Department as evidence of what we did. Not the completed documents, hopefully, but I may have to do those as well. But at least these forms, they're going to want to see these forms.
So if they have children or if they have seniors, they get, say, a higher preference?
No, they're gonna submit the evidence. They're gonna submit the documentation that Barbara requires, and that documentation will support their ask.
Oh,
And it's not,
they're asking it so they can get demographic information.
that's what Barbara is saying.
Correct.
Oh, I see.
If somebody doesn't follow through with a 6-month report, could that?
That's going to be a little bit of an issue. So I'm going to, as I meet with individuals and I give them their grants, I'm going to talk to them a little bit about that so that I can hopefully have an open line of communication with all of these people. I'm going to send them reminders, try to check in with them so that even if they can't submit a report, maybe I can help them write one.
Yeah, just so we have a trail, so to speak, yeah.
Barbara, you used the word reserve the right to terminate a grant, and I'm wondering if it should be like recoup or something. Like, what does it mean to terminate a grant when you've given the cash out already?
Yeah, I don't know. That language I actually pulled from a document that was from the Connecticut Community Foundation. So I'm certainly open to modifications on that. I mean, you're right. Once they have the money, I don't know, what do we do?
I think you can do it,
Buy their
get it
property,
back.
lien on their car? I don't know.
Terminate, we might as well use that word as
Yeah.
opposed to any other.
Yeah.
What, okay, to terminate the grant, then, for example, why would it be terminated? Disabuse of the funds or
Yeah,
fraudulent means?
It was
Yeah.
sort of the idea, if you don't submit the report accounting for what you did with the money, then we'll terminate your grant,
Which
which
you already
we
have.
now are discussing is pretty meaningless, but maybe is some, precatory language to help people fall in line.
So that they would be charged with fraud, defrauding the government then, I would imagine.
No, it's not that. They're just not submitting their 6-month report.
But if they've gotten the money and
Yeah.
then afterwards,
I wouldn't call it fraud. They're just not following through to get to report what they used.
I see. They'd have to give the money back.
Well, good luck. Yeah.
right.
Well, I mean, what happens if they don't say, well, I spent it and I don't have it?
Right, well, that's why that's
It's
why it doesn't say that on this form, because we know how
Yeah.
unrealistic that is.
not going to get it back, but at least it puts that in their mind. One small thing, Barbara, a Board of Selectmen reserves, board is singular.
Where are you?
Paragraph below the 4-line thing. ARPA grant recipients will be asked to file a brief report.
Are you on page 2? Let's see. I don't even know where. Oh, you're on the agreement?
I don't know
No,
which is
it's
right.
the application.
Select men?
No, it's a board.
The
Okay.
Town of Kent Board of Selectmen reserves,
Where
plural.
are you? I don't even.
Right above where, the applicant has to sign.
Oh,
ARPA grant recipients, you see that
oh,
paragraph
yeah.
within the Town of Kent Board of Selectmen reserves.
Okay.
The other thing is grantee. That, I don't know, is that a word? Should it
Totally
be
a word.
recipient?
I use that word daily.
Grantee, grantor. Otherwise,
Where
I
does that
think-
appear?
I mean, I could change it to recipient, I guess, but
Where does that appear?
same
Oh, I see. It
paragraph we were
says
just talking about.
grantee.
Yeah, it's not in compliance.
I'm ambivalent.
Dear God, but you can terminate your grant.
I'm ambivalent. I don't care either way.
Okay.
If we change it once, we need to change it 3 times.
We'll find something missing, but I think This is pretty cool.
I like it. I think it's
I
good.
just thought of something, it's a little off topic. If the volunteer fire department didn't buy the stair chair, should I put the stair chair back in instead of the defibrillators we put in last week?
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yes,
Okay.
And whatever the difference is with the money, put that towards the defibrillators. Because I think
Okay.
we had $10,000.
Yeah, okay. And that was 3,600, the stair chair?
Yep.
See, social media.
if we want to get really nitpicky, let me just point out that at the top of the form, town of needs a space image.
Right, yeah.
Good idea. You know, what's interesting is I noticed that when you lifted some of the other report and put it into the outline, the formatting got crazy. So I'm thinking once it's all in one piece,
Yeah.
somebody's gonna go through and have to format the whole thing.
Yeah,
Right.
Do you want me to give you these applications as PDF documents though, or Word
Yeah.
documents?
no, it's good as a PDF document when they're finalized, because that does translate better over, if you're.
Okay.
Oh, you want it as a PDF, not a Word document?
Your piece should be in Word until it gets inserted into the report, and then the report should be formatted in a way that is consistent, so that there aren't any idiosyncrasies with different fonts showing up
Yeah.
or spacing or numbers, not carrying over in the outline format. And then once it's fine, then PDF it, because then, when it gets shared, it doesn't change.
Yeah, tabbings and all that.
Okay, local small business funding application. Same comment with other,
Oh, yeah. In the same space at the top.
same space at the top. I have no other comments.
And I'll change that wording on the second page again. Board of Selectmen reserves.
Right?
I think it was in there and I think I took it out. I don't know why, but it just sounded more normal to me, but it's me.
Look good to me. With those same things.
Okay, third application, nonprofits. Looks a little bit different because of the menus of type of organization. And the idea of what might be done with the funding.
Yeah, they're the only ones that can claim a decrease in fundraising.
Negative, second page, second paragraph, response to the negative heath and or health. Was that meant to be health?
Probably. Where are you?
Second page,
That's
second
on all
paragraph,
three.
nonprofit. Please provide a brief narrative of how your NFP would use the ARPA grant funding in response to the negative heath.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
on all
my
three of them.
dyslexia. Yep.
That's
Good.
Oh, it's that way on all of them.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'll fix it.
That's pretty good for all you've done. few errors.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is it important for a nonprofit to have experienced financial hardship if what they want to do is do a program for the benefit of people such as Marblewood and the Orchard?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Is it, so I think it would be important for nonprofits who are just asking for funding to make up for lost fundraising and other expenses to document that they experienced financial hardship. I think that some nonprofit asks are not based on financial hardship, but based on the desire to do something positive for the community, such as the request of Marblewood for the blueberry orchard. And in that case, do we need to, is it important that each and every nonprofit applying show financial hardship?
Well, I'll address that first. I think you're correct. No, they don't need to show financial hardship if they're applying for funding to institute a program for the good of the community. And if that's the case, then I'm going to request some sort of documentation of the outline of the program, the expected outcomes, et cetera. So
Just
each application will be reviewed on its own merit, depending on what they're asking for and why they're asking for it.
as an example, and Sharon the library got $3,000 to institute a meditation program or to re-up it because they felt people really needed that in this time. And so
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that any not-profit that is going to do something like that can put together a one-page
Yeah, and why they feel it would benefit.
plan, you know, business plan for a nonprofit or for the program or whatever
Mhm.
that I could append to their application that would make it complete.
Well, getting
Maybe
back,
you could just add, please provide a brief narrative of how blah, 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 response to the negative health and or economic impacts, semicolon, no, you don't need a comma, or
What I was looking at.
program that, a program that adds value to the community. Like, can't we just add a little phrase there?
I think that would be a good add. I actually did find room for describing a beneficial program in the narrative section. It was the bullets on the very first page of the form that say, the very last one says, must have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19. So that was where that question was coming from. Like, is that an absolute bar? And if you can't demonstrate that, you are not allowed to apply. And I don't.
How about
think
if
that
I
was our
change the word,
intention.
how about if I change the word must to, if they've experienced financial hardship, they need to be able to document it, quantify it, et cetera,
I think
instead of
that's
must.
well, getting back to Marblewood, you know, that since you mentioned it, is that they have already been recommended for
That's right,
approval.
they don't have to apply.
So, I mean, that's what I was gonna say. Why is it,
Because there might be others out there that would do really nice things for our community that we haven't heard about yet.
but you know, I was wondering too, is that, has Greenwood Counseling, have they been recommended? Because it is listed in the minutes, or is not listed in the minutes, but then I guess I'm confused as to whether or not they were or were not recommended.
No, they weren't. They weren't amongst our group of recommendations, but they did write letters and submit proposals. I think I'm not sure, maybe as part of the COG thing to
Yeah,
all the
that's-
COG towns.
Yeah, that's how they started out. But I think they'll be happy enough to, if they want to, just fill out an application and apply. I don't think that's going to be a problem for them.
Okay, so the last bullet on page 1, you're going to rework a little bit, and then
Yeah, I'll
page
make it,
2,
I'll take out the word must and say if.
and then on page 2, you'll add a little phrase at the end, or develop a program that
Mhm.
benefits the community or something like that.
Well, it
Mhm.
should respond to the negative health or economic impacts of COVID-19 in order to be eligible. So
Right,
that was
so,
why, when I read that, I thought that that was just fine, that Marvelwood could easily write a narrative about why refurbishing the blueberry orchard, and I'm just using them as an example here, but, because what they are doing with the funding would respond to a negative health impact of COVID, because it would respond to decreased socialization, isolation, and mental health challenges, as well as potential, food and vitamin deficits. But I think that we can't really, in good conscience or in alignment with the guidelines, throw it open to just anyone who wants to do a nice program. It has to be a program that is designed in some way to help the community overcome negative impacts of COVID.
I agree.
Anything more on those forms? And then if not, can we move on to the grant agreement? Good? Okay.
This is something they'll get when they actually come in to pick up a check. But I think it's important to include it in the package so that people see a preview before they apply for funding, so they can see they're going to be expected to sign an agreement.
Mhm.
And it's a bit of a release as well, that if we want to produce reports about what we did with the ARPA funding, that we have their permission to utilize this information as well.
I did read, it might have been Brookfield, the town of Brookfield was discussing whether or not it would be a deterrent effect if they publicized the recipients of the grant. So, we might expect that, even though whether or not people would pick this up when they were reading the grant agreement, we might expect that people would be concerned about whether or not their name would be listed.
Yeah, there's not much we can do with that. It's federal money, it's public money. It's not, we're not a social service agency that has some sort of HIPAA law or anything like that. This is public money.
I think it's okay. I really do.
I've already gotten requests from places like opengovernment.org that want all this information from us. I mean, it's never ending.
Was this Brookfield thing that you're mentioning, Connie, was this a business or was this an individual?
I think I read something in the newspaper about ARPA people having this conversation. So that's why I bring it up, but I think it's fine. And,
As long as people are aware.
yeah,
And as you say, it's public money.
if
so-
they're going to all the trouble to pull together their information and document how they were harmed by COVID so that they could apply for this grant, then, you know, they deserve the grant and they should feel okay, you know, with people knowing that they got one.
Well, it says right here about how, that, the town could use, this information in press releases, and they're consenting to it.
That's right.
By-
That's what Barbara was pointing out, that it's kind of a release. It's a
Yeah.
contract, it's a grant, you know, contract, but it's also their release.
Right, so, I mean,
think about it from the perspective, I'm going to be giving reports to the Board of Selectmen. Those immediately become public information. The local newspaper reporter is pulling documents. I mean, I don't have any control over what they do with that information once it's public, so it just needs to be put out there.
Well, if someone feels strongly, then they don't take the money. If they don't
Yeah.
consent.
right, yep.
I have a question about the funding grant agreement. It does seem to be geared towards businesses and or nonprofits. Would an individual or family, you know, things like may monitor and conduct a review of your operations under this grant, may include a visit from town personnel. That really doesn't apply to individuals and families. So could you add a paragraph that people don't think you're going to go to their house and that they don't have to tell you how exactly they spent their $5,000?
How about if I just add those words, if applicable,
Yep,
to the beginning of that?
there you go. So I think this sounds like anything I ever read that came out of a bank, and you know, usually people are just gonna sign it.
Yeah. I mean, if it's applicable, so maybe it wouldn't be applicable, but
It's applicable. Sounds good.
Terms and conditions, if that's I constantly see that. If you want to apply for something, you have to agree to the terms and conditions, and then you check it. If you don't check it, you know. This is the same thing, I would assume.
will that work for you, Patricia, if I just add that word, if applicable, to the beginning?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I'm the first page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraph down.
Mhm.
The ARPA funding is intended to serve the public interest and gives high priority to the realization of equality, for equality of opportunity, to the realization for is not grammatically correct.
Okay. Let's see, to the realization, so change that to of equality for opportunity,
No,
switch
you
those
can just
words
get
around?
rid of the realization for, so that it says gives high priority to equality of opportunity for all members of society.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's better.
okay, all right. So take out the 3 words, the realization and for.
Or, yes.
Okay. All right.
That's it.
Going, done. Okay. Thank you for making those edits, Barbara, and for putting the materials together to begin with.
Yeah.
Very helpful. I don't think that we need to talk about the presentation to the Board of Selectmen until we are closer to finalizing our report. I have one question to ask you based on our conversation just now about, the whole idea of disclosure and not as I was putting together my section on what we did, I was thinking about what appendices we might attach. There's a ton of information, of course, that's in our Google Drive. So I wanted your opinion on whether or not we should attach as appendices the notes from our focus groups, our one-on-one interviews, and copies of the correspondence sent to us over the course of our time together. I do intend that the survey responses be an appendix, and that has been published already, so there's no issue with that and no names attached with that. So I just want your thoughts.
I think I know Patricia's answer to that.
Well, I think I would be more pleased if you just said that those items are available upon request, that they are open to the public.
I mean, we did tell the focus group participants that it was a conversation not to leave the room. It wasn't being recorded. It wasn't going to be public. So maybe not the notes per se that Athenaid and Darlene and Melissa did, but maybe just a synopsis of the commentary would be okay.
Well, for Melissa's notes, I blinded it, so I took names out. And I wonder if social services organizations even care if their names are in there. And I wonder the same for nonprofit organizations.
I would think they want to be known that they are seeking funds and trying to help their organizations. I don't think there's any harm in listing.
But it is rather long. And so I do think Barbara's suggestion about available by request is not a bad one either. It's just how much insight do we want to give people reading this report into how it was that we made our decision? If we're letting people have the survey, if we're including the survey results as an appendix, then I feel like we should include it all. Or we just say available on request.
Maybe you could just maybe something can just be said how other available resources or whatever, either available upon request and just leave it as that. And if anybody is curious as to what else there is available, then they can, look it up online or however it's going to be handled.
But you're going to say that we had focus groups and
That's in there.
interviews, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
That there were, but it's bare bones. It says
I mean,
3 focus groups and they were these groups.
I think I vote for synopsis of the survey, synopses of the focus groups.
I'm not gonna do that.
No.
I'm gonna come right
And
out and say that I'm not gonna do that. I don't wanna, because I also know very well from this meeting room that interpretations of what happened are not going to be the same for any of us. My interpretation or synopsis of the survey results is not going to be anybody else's synopsis of the survey result, and vice versa, no matter who drafts it. The purpose is that people can draw their own conclusion. And the same thing will happen with the focus groups, with the one-on-one interviews. The people that did the one-on-one interviews submitted notes, don't want those notes reinterpreted, I would believe. I just don't think that's a good idea or a good use of our time, because it will just give us months of things to talk about.
How about if it was just the factual information that was used?
There's
the
nothing
committee.
factual about qualitative information.
That's what I'm saying, the factual information being the survey.
We had focus groups, blah, blah, blah. That's it, yeah.
Yeah,
This document is people are not gonna muddle through more and more pages and pages and
but
pages.
if they want to, they could see the notes.
Right, on request,
On
that's
request.
fine, but yeah, no.
Can we vote on that?
Would you like to see how the draft for the report comes out first and know what the compiled information would be before we vote on it? Because I don't know that everyone knows what we're voting on.
Well, we're voting on what the appendices, the indices. Isn't that what we're talking about?
Do you know what appendices we're talking about?
Well,
Why don't we wait till we get to that point and then I think we can vote on it, Joe. There's
Okay.
no reason not to vote on it, but I think that we need to know what we're voting on.
So
I will write it both ways. And then-
you're going to put, we did focus groups with these groups of people. We did surveys, we did this. And if you want to see full reports, it's attached in the appendices.
This is what I wrote so that you can see. I gotta move this box out of the way.
I thought it was upon request.
Right now I've got it yellowed because I didn't know what the group would prefer. So it goes through, the report goes through the methodology, talks about when we were convened, what our charge is. The elements of our analysis, our assessment include environmental scan. That will be included as an appendix. It's factual or not. It could be by request if you want to see it. Survey, that we conducted a survey. A total of 264 respondents completed the survey. Does not interpret the survey, but if people want to see the responses, which have already been published, they could go to an appendix and exhibit. The focus groups, to supplement and gain a richer understanding of the quantitative and qualitative information gathered by survey, we hosted a series of 3 focus groups for the following specific categories: residents, nonprofits, and social services. There's my note. Should we share the notes appended here too? And we can decide whether we want to publish them, whether we want them to be part of the report, or whether we want them to be available on request. But we have notes already, so there's no reason to further distill those into a synopsis. One-on-one interviews, and there's a list of the people that we did one-on-one interviews with. Michelle Mott, representatives of Marblewood, Kent, South Kent, Housatonic Valley Regional High School, the Kent Volunteer Fire Department, Gary Davis at Davis IGA, Fife and Drum, and Vanessa Anderson. And I thought I had Lori's Nails in there. Where'd she go?
Well, this is what I was
She's the
speaking
first
about
one.
when I said synopsis. And
Okay.
then,
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said this is what you were talking about.
yeah, the descriptions you have here of the focus groups, one-on-one interviews is what I was thinking of when I said a synopsis.
Great, then we have it. So, and then Lori's Nails I put down here.
She's the first
on-
one.
Right, because there were the one-on-one interviews that we did, and then there are the people from whom we have letters and correspondence. And I listed them as well. But whether or not we share the actual letters will be something that we'll need to talk about more and decide.
You mean
And I actually,
the emails? I don't think that would, to publish those, I don't think that would be a good idea.
I mean, somebody who sends a letter to a town board, I think has every expectation that it might be made public.
We could just say something like, we received input from people in the government, municipality, rather than go into detail what they sent.
Okay, so listen, this is what I will do for our next meetings to help us decide. First of all, I will excerpt that part that I just showed you so you can all read that, not just in the Google Drive, but as a Word document. I will also show you what it will look like to have the appendices compiled as a document that we could either append to the report or make available upon request. And then having seen those, we can decide whether we think that's a good idea to either append it or make it available by request, or whether we think it shouldn't be shared.
What about the things like with the final rule, you know, the treasury notes and the CCM material?
You know, I thought Barbara did a really good job of describing it, and I'm not sure how many people would actually want to look at the treasury regs, but I'm not opposed to attaching it as an
Well, I
appendix
mean,
if you think it should be.
It was important in how we arrived, you know, and we had to follow those guidelines.
Okay, so we can do those as appendixes too. There's no reason they shouldn't be shared, and they are public documents already.
I mean, people don't have to read them if they don't want, but I mean, it was important to, you know, to spotlight that we use that.
So next week, will you just put everything together? We'll have the one big document
That's what I hope to do.
that we, with the 3 different parts in it.
So Patricia, if you would send me your edited document when you get a chance as Word, and Barbara, you as well with yours, then what I will do is put them together. They'll be in the Google Drive, but I will also download it as a Word document so that we can all receive it that way too.
Okay, and then either email that document before the next meeting or distribute it, because I would love for the next meeting to be the last. Is that possible?
So what I
Before
think
the
then is,
presentation.
can we make a commitment to have that document back in my hands by Monday? And then I will do it and send it out. Because if I get it Wednesday, there won't be time for us to read it. But if we can all commit to having that done by Monday, you know,
Well,
then.
there's only 2 of us. I can commit to having it done by
Great.
Friday or Saturday.
Me too. I'm good.
Good. Then Friday or Saturday is great. I won't touch it till Monday.
Yep. The only thing, Connie, I did have time to read through the document that you inserted, the stuff that you wrote. And my only comment is that you refer to the group of us as we a lot in there, we. And I was thinking that it might read a little better if we were referred to as the committee
That's fine.
instead of we and us. I don't know how anybody else feels about it, but it was just, it caught my eye as I was reading through it.
Well, truth be known, I was doing it while listening to a webinar, so I'm sure that there are many places to tighten.
Well, that's why I think we all get a look at it once it's all. And thank you, the 3 of you, for doing it all.
I have another question that maybe you aren't gonna like. Do we have to do a PowerPoint or something to make this presentation to the Board of Selectmen rather than just like handing in this document in the folder and presenting it as they read, because they might not read it in advance? I mean, if they're true to form, they don't always read the folder materials in advance. So I'm wondering if it would behoove us to have a much shortened like PowerPoint thing to accompany the presentation. Just an idea. I'm okay either way.
Who would do it? Not me.
Well, I mean, that's the second question. The first question is it, would it be a better presentation with it? If the answer is yes, then we can try to figure out how to get that done. If the answer is it won't make any difference at all, so then maybe we don't bother.
Can we present the document to the board X amount of days in advance and say, we will be discussing this and please,
And we should.
yeah, please make sure you are, well informed of it because we expect to,
Yeah.
You
Then it
you
goes
approve
into a
it.
folder and the public can see it too, and
Mhm.
people can come to the
and
meeting
it's
and watch
open
it.
meeting, so.
Well, what does a PowerPoint presentation involve?
Well, it would be like when you do client pitches or whatever, you have a book that has a lot of information in it, and then you usually do some sort of a slideshow that helps the presenter to gives them cues as to what they have to say next and all of that, and gives people something, a nice looking page to look at. That's all.
But that takes a lot of planning, doesn't it?
It does, and it also takes a lot
Well,
of.
to some people, no, it's an easy fix, but to me, it would take me a ton of time to do it. But sometimes you have people who are like PowerPoint whizzes.
It's
and they
not
can-
so much the putting together of the slides. I think it's our discussion of them, and I just would.
I think
I
that would
wouldn't
extend
want
it.
it to set us back another couple of weeks, which it
Yeah.
could. Having just been through this with the housing plan committee, it took us 3 meetings to get our slides.
Well,
Can I say, this is a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen. This is the only thing we are talking about. There's going to be one rather large document to peruse. I would like to think my colleagues will look at one document before a special meeting. One of the
Yeah.
3 selectmen know all about this.
And
I would like to think that the other 2 would be able to.
the value of that is that rather than take up time presenting to the Board of Selectmen, we allow ample time for their questions and for discussion. And I think that that is, just in light of what you just said, Glenn, about, give us a break. It's the only thing on the agenda. We can read your report. I think that that is,
Well, I mean, I'm not to argue the point because I don't want to do a PowerPoint myself either. But it wasn't so much for the Board of Selectmen. If you watch these meetings with the Board of Selectmen virtually and you look at faces making presentations, that's one thing, you can get it. But if you're watching virtually, the PowerPoint thing might be very helpful. So it's not for the edification of the Board of Selectmen that you would primarily do it. Not that I'm volunteering to do it, because I can't. I don't have the time or skill set to do that. But I just felt it should be brought up.
Yeah, good point, but I think this, yes, it is for the public as well, but this is really for the selectmen. It is their,
Right.
it goes into their laps now, so,
I wouldn't think there would be enough time to
yeah.
do
I mean, it
that.
would only extend this process if we really want to get it done.
And it's a good idea to think about, but unless one of us really A, wants to do it, or B, is really adept at doing this, I
There's
I
no
wouldn't
way,
touch it.
yeah.
Really.
But I certainly, when presenting this to them, say, we expect you to read this in detail and be able to ask us in-depth questions and not just sit there. Just, I think, make it a really a strong point that please read this and be prepared. Because as you keep telling us, Patricia, how many months and of work has gone into this?
A year, I think, just about.
it was August,
August.
Almost, so I think,
more time than I've put into any of my other
yeah, more
town
time
of Kent
than a
things.
pregnancy.
And who knew?
Well,
So
but
I
it's
think
an important job that we did, so I don't resent or feel bad about all the time I put into it. It's an important committee, and It took us long and we did a lot of hard work, but it merited that. So,
I agree. And I also,
Are we wrapping though? Are we getting ready to wrap up? Because I actually do have my next town commitment in less than an hour and I need to get home, take care of a husband that has COVID, remove children that don't have COVID and get them some dinner and then get back on Zoom.
It's after 6 too.
Yes, it is.
the only
So-
thing I was going to add was that in the minutes and meetings, if you add how many meetings we actually had, the number of meetings, instead of every other week or every week, just, it's 26 or it's 38 or it's however many meetings we actually had.
I can do that.
And then Connie, I think you would be the one to present this to the selectmen.
Let's talk about that when we get to it.
Physically hand them this document, yeah,
Deliver it, sure.
yeah, I mean,
But let's talk about when we get to it. So next week is the 25th.
Noisy bird.
Next week at 4:30. Regular meeting. We good? We ready to adjourn? 6:09. Thank you very much for your time.
bye, ladies.
Thanks, everybody.